Right, the Dana White versus Francis Ngannou beef explained. Depending how deeply you watch MMA, you've probably picked up on the fact that Dana White really doesn't like Francis Ngannou. And in this video, I'm going to run through all the key factors. First off, I'll start with a couple of recent clips of Dana that got me thinking to make this video.
I'm going to tell you what I think about what Francis is all about the money. But realistically, his deal was bigger here.
Oh, he did that thing where he looks off to the side. That must mean it's true.
His deal was bigger here if he stayed in the UFC. I was going to cut Francis when he lost 2 in a row. I was going to cut him.
That was after the Derek Lewis
Yeah.
fight?
Somebody around here begged me not to do it. You know, we're moving on. Obviously, everybody loves Tom Aspinall and wants to see Jones and Aspinall or Stipe and Aspinall or...
Fuck me, Dana hates Ngannou so much it's got him talking publicly about Tom Aspinall fighting John Jones. That's when you know it's serious.
I didn't like Francis as a person. Wasn't a guy I wanted to do business with. Francis isn't a good guy. He plays the good guy. I don't understand the language, and you know, so he seems like he's a nice guy. He's not, and he's just not a guy that I wanted to be in business with. Francis could have done a deal here. Hunter threw the kitchen sink at that guy, you know? Hunter went to more dinners with Francis Ngannou and did everything in his power to try to get this fight done, and he's just not a guy that I wanted to be in business with.
Cool. Dana doesn't like losing, does he? Dana just can't stop himself taking snipes at Francis. We all know that Dana is extremely petty, and we all know that he hates Francis. But Dana is starting to make himself look really pathetic here. Like an obsessed ex that just wants you to burn. You can just see the agitated hate in him anytime he talks about Francis, which is oddly often for someone that doesn't care about him or ever think about him. But how did this all start, and where's it going to end? Well, I'm going to break it down for you now. The first rumblings of a beef between these two was back in 2018 when Francis took on Derek Lewis. This was famously one of the shittest fights of all UFC history. Needless to say, Dana wasn't happy about it, and he went on a rant.
I think his ego ran away with him, big time. I can tell you that his ego absolutely did run away with him. And the minute that happens to you in the fight game, you see what happens. Start to fall apart. I had some personal encounters with him, as did other people in the organization. And this guy's ego just was so out of control. It's like before the Stipe fight, he took off and went to France. Didn't even really train for that fight. And you see the results. Well, then he comes back and he did train, but ego is what hurt Francis Ngannou.
When you hear Dana talk about a fighter like this, you know that he has a venomous personal grudge with him. And you also know he rarely lets it go. Later, in 2021, when Francis had his rematch with Stipe, issues around Francis' contract came to public light. Francis wanting the freedom to pursue boxing while still with the UFC was made public by Dana. This was also around the time that Francis started publicly voicing his frustrations with UFC fighter pay, which of course, as we know, will have absolutely delighted old Danny Cakes. To this, Dana resorted to one of his favourite rebuttals.
If you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here.
After a further year of unproductive talks regarding contract renewal, Francis being able to box was a major sticking point for Dana. But Francis was determined, and with John Jones firmly still in hiding, Francis took on Ciryl Gane in Anaheim. It was the last fight on Francis' contract. With Francis being champ going into this fight, it made it a very unique and interesting situation. He fought Gane, wearing knee braces as well due to a torn ACL. Dana had every single one of his fingers and toes crossed going into that fight. But it wasn't enough. Francis got the win and remained the champ. Dana, whilst at the event, famously didn't put the belt around Francis. He later downplayed it and saying he was dealing with something backstage. But we all knew the truth. Dana was in fact a massive bellend. In 2023, contract negotiations between Dana and Francis completely broke. Francis turned down a UFC offer for $8 million, saying the terms of the contract would make him feel like a prisoner. To be fair, for $8 million, I'd sign a contract with fucking P. Diddy. Oil me up. Dana released Francis from his contract, making Francis the first and only reigning champion to leave the UFC. He bet on himself. Dana publicly claimed that Francis left because he was afraid to fight top contenders. Dana then proceeded to text John Jones to tell him that he was safe to come out from behind the sofa. Francis then signed for the PFL, who offered him the opportunity to also box. Dana aggressively pushed the narrative that Francis had fumbled the bag. As we looked around at the time, a lot of top-name boxers were getting tied up in fights. It did look touch and go for a moment. But Francis eventually secured the fight with Tyson Fury. That fight alone was a win. The money he would have made in that one fight would have matched, if not surpassed, the UFC deal, despite what Dana wants you to believe. And he still has the freedom of massive earning potentials beyond that. Many people, including myself, thought that Francis beat Fury that night, but the judges, in typical fashion, had other ideas. Francis then went on to fight Anthony Joshua in another big payday. Joshua, however, took Francis very seriously, and he'd done his preparation, and he knocked Francis out. Dana struggled to contain his glee.
What do you mean? What did I make?
Yeah,
what did I make of it?
When you saw it, like it was. People are saying it's one of the more violent knockouts in boxing history.
Yeah, I mean, going into the Fury fight, if Fury trained for the fight and didn't show up and, look like he ate Tyson Fury, it's probably the way that fight would have ended too. You know how I feel about crossovers into boxing, and that's how they end, just like that.
Then, sadly, tragedy struck and Francis lost his young son. It's hard to imagine what he was going through then, and there was every chance he would never fight again. But as we know, Francis later returned to MMA to fight for the belt at the PFL. Everyone was really interested to see how this would go down. Francis had been away from MMA for a while now. How was the competition level at the PFL? Was Francis even the same after the loss of his son? Or was the Anthony Joshua knockout still affecting him? All questions were answered with a dominant victory. The minute that Francis won, you could see all of the emotions instantly start flooding out of him. It was actually difficult to watch, knowing that that was a release of such a deep well of emotions. Dana, as you can imagine, dealt with this in pure grace.
What did you make of Francis's performance, given everything that's happened to him in his career, the 2 losses in boxing, the loss of his son?
It was better than Don Davis's. Way better. Listen, man, I think that I'm going to tell you what I think about what Francis is all about the money. Francis left because he knew that if he fought John Jones and didn't win, it would hurt his chances of making the money that he wanted to make. But realistically, his deal was bigger here.
Look, did Francis make decisions based on what was best for him personally? I'm sure he did. Was Dana angry because his bully business tactics didn't work on Francis? Yes, I think that was the start of all this. But seeing Francis go out there and succeed, proving Dana's narrative wrong, ate away at Dana. And he's becoming more and more bitter and angry with every successful move of Francis. And to be honest, he's really letting himself down. Here's a recent uncharacteristically spicy clip of Francis addressing all this.
Dana have lost this in this situation, and the only thing is that he can't understand it. Like, bro, I won everything. I left. It's been almost 2 years, and the guy is still out there. He can't live without it. You could have just said we didn't find a agreement or something, and we continue our life. What's the problem here? He can handle this loss. I'm sure he's been praying for my downfall, and then I'm just keep doing my thing, rising. Since I left the UFC, and which money he's talking about? The money that he owes me. They say, oh, we're going to back pay you from the money that we owe you from the Stipe and Senegal fight. All that, they never back pay me. Now I have made more money than I would have ever made in the UFC. I would say maybe twice.
And here is Dana's response to that.
Never happened. So he's full of shit there. Then I lost. I didn't lose anything. I was done with Francis after the. He owes me money because we had to watch that fight with him and the Black Beast. He should actually pay me back for that fight, and all of you. And me praying for it. Trust me, I don't think about Francis that much.
Well, it seems clear that all of this is far from over. On the plus side, Dana doesn't have to deal with such a horrible man anymore. Anyway, what was that about John Jones, Dana? If you like this video, give us a sub, check out this playlist of recent bangers. I'll see you next time.